Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning back in. You know, since I started the channel roughly a year ago, or started doing these tip videos, I've gotten a lot of questions from individuals that do not have the ability to bring with them a bunch of rods when they go fishing. And that could be because they're limited based on tournament rules to a set number of rods as a co-angler. It could be because they're fishing out of a kayak or a canoe, or they're shore fishing and they just don't have the ability to carry with them a bunch of rods. Or it just could be a financial issue where they don't have the ability to afford to have 20 different rods, you know, and they can only have one or two or three. You know, I've got the luxury of being able to carry with me 20 plus rods in my Skeeter at any point. And when I want to just grab a different bait, I reach in, grab the rod that's got it rigged, and I can go ahead and make casts with it. It's a very efficient way for me to fish, and it's a way for me to be prepared during my tournaments by having a bunch of different rods rigged with different baits, different techniques, and it just makes it very efficient for me while I'm out on the water. But it's a luxury, right? You know, not everyone has that ability to do that. And I've gotten a lot of questions from guys, you know, specifically asking if I could only carry 2 or 3 rods, what rods would those be? And when I say rods, I'm talking baits and specific techniques. And, you know, are there any baits that I kind of just leave rigged up year round, but no matter where I'm going across the country? And that's how I want to address this. There are definitely a handful of baits that no matter where I go, I've always got them rigged up. You know, pretty much all of, you know, these 3 baits I'm going to talk about right now are baits that when I rig them up in the spring, they are on my rods throughout the entire year, except if I got to cut them off to retie a different color on, or I need to respool line. I mean, these rods are basically designated for this technique at this point. So I want to go through the three baits that no matter what time of year, no matter where I'm fishing, they are always rigged up on my rod. And you know, they're probably on my rod because 1, they work great, 2, they catch a lot of fish, and 3, they catch big fish too. So guys, I don't know that any of these are going to surprise you, but I think you'll agree that these are all great ones to have on, and ones that if you only had 2 or 3 rods that you could have rigged up, they'd be really good choices. So the first one is a Wacky Rig, guys. You gotta have a Wacky Rig. No matter where you go in the country, a soft plastic stick bait, you know, this is my favorite. This is the Berkley Powerbait Max Scent 5-inch, the General. No matter where you go, you need to have one tied on. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First, this is a great bait to throw pretty much anywhere, but you can really cover a lot of water with this very quickly. You know, if I'm fishing the bank or I'm seeing, you know, fish cruising the bank, a Wacky Rig is a great way to go. But more importantly, if I want to make this a deep water bait, I can do it very quickly by just adding a nail weight, and then I have my NACO rig, which is just a weighted Wacky Rig. But I can fish that down into 20 foot of water with a very simple nail weight being added to this bait. So not only does it work extremely well just weightless, it can be quickly adapted, you know, with very minimal effort and time to being able to fish way offshore in some deeper water. But in my opinion, if you have, you know, a Berkley Max Scent General like this in any of the natural colors, this happens to be my favorite. This is the watermelon green pumpkin laminate color. Very natural looking in my opinion. That's my favorite, my go-to. You know, I just think no matter where you're at in the country, this bait I will have tied on, and I think you guys should too. The next is one that, you know, I've done a lot of videos on, and a lot of people have expressed to me that they're not super comfortable using it, but I think a lot of other people would indicate that it is a very versatile bait. And that just is a swim jig. You know, this is a Dirty Jigs, the original size swim jig. It's not the No jack, it's not the finesse. This is just the standard size swim jig. For me, this is one of the most versatile baits out there. I can fish it efficiently through grass, through wood, around docks. It's a very good bait at getting through cover, but it generates a ton of bites, and it can mimic most forms of forage. Whether you want to fish it like a shad, if you want to throw a green pumpkin colored around bluegill, you can even work these as a jig and actually let it fall to the bottom and work it like a jig through areas that you might throw a normal jig. But it really allows me to cover a ton of water, to be extremely efficient, and to not have to be switching rods, because this one bait does so many different things. For me, a swim jig is on my rod year round, works phenomenal in the spring, awesome in the summer, and again in the fall. There's really no time or place where I do not have a swim jig tied on. I would say overall, a shad colored pattern is probably the best that you can find. But again, if you're fishing some off colored water, or you're fishing around bluegill, definitely the black and blues as well as the greens all work really well. But this is just one of those baits. If I've only got a couple of rods, to me, this covers like, this is the equivalent to like 6 different baits all mixed in one. Obviously, there's times I might rather throw a chatterbait. Maybe there's times I'd rather throw, say, a lipless crankbait, because this bait, they may outperform this bait in very specific scenarios, but this will outperform those 5 or 6 other baits, in a bunch of scenarios as well. And you don't need to carry, say, a chatterbait. If you get into really dense weed, a chatterbait won't work as well as a swim jig. If you get around some isolated wood, a chatterbait may get hung up. You won't have those issues with this. So it's an extremely versatile bait, and one that I have tied on year round, if not 2 or 3, to be honest with you. The last one has to do with really just being a fish catching bait, and one that no matter where you go seems to work, even in dirtier water. A lot of people don't like to throw small swim baits in dirtier water, but it still generates a lot of strikes. For me, it's all about the guppy head, the Matt Steffen Dirty Jigs guppy head, which is a swim bait head that I designed for throwing small swim baits. The Power Swimmer by Berkley is an absolutely great swim bait. The 2.8, 3.3, 3.8 sizes. If you guys like your Kitex or whatever the brand is that you like to throw, any of those small swim baits on a swim bait jig head that was, appropriately designed for them is a great bait to have on. I will, again, have that tied on throughout the year, no matter where I go. If I need to generate a couple of bites, it's a great bait to do that. I can't tell you the number of times it saved me in a scenario where I was short of my limit with a little bit of time, and I was able to muster up one last keeper bite, and I've won a lot of money doing it. But it doesn't matter what species you're after, that catches fish. In fact, all 3 of these baits, does not matter if you're fishing largemouth, smallmouth, or spotted bass. They just really perform well across the country. So guys, if you're limited to a handful of rods, I highly recommend trying to choose baits that will allow you to fish a lot of different techniques, in a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different depths throughout the water, a lot of different cover, because you really want to be looking for very versatile baits. And all 3 of these, I got to tell you, I continue to fall back on year after year after year, and they continue to come through for me. So I hope this was helpful, guys. If there's other baits that you guys have to have tied on, no matter where you're at across the country, no matter what time of year, throw it up in the comment section so that the rest of us can learn from you guys as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for another video coming out tomorrow.